Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number LB4311-350-600. This is a single acting spring hinge, full mortise, residential weight, lube bearing, steel based and primed for painting hinge. Let's dissect the part number. LB from Bommer means that it is a single acting spring hinge door, typical man door, single acting spring hinge. The 4311, all of that conspires to mean everything about the hinge, basically. It means that it is a 1/4 inch radius, that it has these 3 holes in the template pattern, and that its residential weight, the leaf thickness is 96 thousandths, that it's full mortise, so that when you bring the hinge leaves parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. An LB hinge is inherently a 3-knuckle hinge, and the 4311 gives you the rest of the details. The 350, that means the size. That means that this hinge is 3.5 by 3.5. The height is the first dimension on a hinge like this. Not that it matters on a hinge that's basically square, but it would matter if it was a 4.5 by 4. It's important to know that the height is the first dimension. 3.5 by 3. The last portion, the 600, means 2 things. It means it's made of steel, and that it is prime coat, meaning that the hinge would need to be painted or simply left. Why would you want a prime coat hinge? Well, because you're going to paint it a specific color. There's no reason to pay for a plated finish when you're going to paint over it, and you would want a prime coat finish for that anyway. Or you might just want the least expensive hinge, or could be that the hinge you're replacing is this light gray color. So there you go. This is a grade 1 hinge, which is rated for 1,000,000 cycles. There is a stamping that's on the hinge leaf, and there's an image below this video showing what that says as well. These are non-handed. They can be mounted for either right-hand doors or for left-hand doors. This is what's called a self-lubricating bearing. It's a maintenance-free sort of bearing construction from Bommer. That's the LB part again. Easily adjustable spring tension. We'll go over setting the tension in a moment. ANSI templated screw hole pattern. If you have a 3.5 inch hinge and your screw holes look like that, half moon, some people call it, or they're like this, that's called template pattern. There's a link below this video to a document called Template, where you can review the precise location of the screw holes. And by all means, if you're unsure if your hinge matches those locations, just refer to the template and compare that against your existing hinge. The pivot point aligns with standard hinges that are residential, meaning that their leaf thickness between 85 and 109 thousandths thick, meaning that the vertical axis of pivoting of this hinge is compatible with other residential hinges, meaning you can mix and match. You can use 2 spring hinges and a ball bearing hinge on a door, or whatever the case is. Okay, made of steel, we discussed that, 1/4 inch radius, 96 thousandths leaf thickness. There are 6 holes, and speaking of those 6 holes, you'll get screws. Bommer provides all metal and all machine screws for this in a complementary color. Well, these are prime coat. Now, let's get to where you're going to use this. There is a link below this video to a document called Certifications and Hinge Selection Guide. That table on the lower part of that link shows you how many spring hinges you need based on the weight of the door. If you've got a door that's 70 pounds, you're going to go with 2 spring hinges and 1 standard hinge. Or if it's heavier than that, go with all 3 spring hinges, provided that you're really not exceeding 90 pounds. Now, I'm a fan of all spring hinges, and here's why. Well, it's not for the obvious reason, but what I find is through years of selling them, servicing them, maintaining them, readjusting them, troubleshooting them, if you are underpowered, let's say in the spring hinge department, you will find that you've got to set the tension quite high so that when the door gets to 90 degrees and you let the door go, you need to get the door simply moving so that there's inertia so that it will get all the way closed and latched. I liken having more spring power on reserve, like with an additional spring hinge, is that the last critical 20 degree of closing, you've got residual torque in store or on board to get the door to latch without slamming it liking it to a tugboat. They don't go very fast, but they can pull a lot of weight. That torque idea is there when you've got more springs involved in the task, and you can share that load among those spring hinges as it's most effective to do so. So I like all spring hinges, because if you have a fire-rated door, and it's unlikely you do if you've got a 3.5-inch hinge, but if you did, your door has to be two things. It has to be self-closing and self-latching. And if you don't have both of those conditions met, you technically don't have a fire door. Let's say that this is a 3-flat of a condo building, and it's not fire-rated, but the door needs to be locked because there's an electric strike and an intercom system, and you want that. All the tenants obviously want that exterior door to be closed. You'll find that if you're underpowered in the spring hinge department, they'll set it so the door slams, and sometimes it will basically bounce back open if there's not perfect alignment of the latch bolt, the electric strike, things of that nature. More spring hinges allows you to keep the ability to pull it closed a little bit better, even though it's not pulling, and do so in such a way that's slightly more controlled. Now, spring hinges, in my opinion, aren't a way to control a door because it's a spring. There's no control over it. Versus like hydraulic control, a surface overhead door closer, or an overhead concealed, or a floor closer. But the truth of the matter is there are times when only a spring hinge is permissible to get a job done. So there you go. If you're unsure, go with an additional spring hinge. If you're unsure and you try 2 and you needed 3, you can always order a third. Or 1 and you needed 2, you can always order an extra 1. That's just the bottom line, because when that door gets to 90 degrees, it has to, or even further, it has to overcome the dead stop nature of the door, the weight of the door, the size of the door, all the air resistance that it's going to move. Possibly the jamb is towed and it's actually technically lifting up like this, fighting gravity. So lots of applications. The certifications and hinge selection guide is the table to use, and proceed as you see fit. There's also a link below this video to a document called Installation Instructions. You're going to install or hang the door with the spring hinges. You're just going to get it hung. With the tension collar pointed towards the top of the door, and you can install it either way you want, but with the tension collar pointed towards the top, every order that you place will include a tension rod. Every hinge that you order will have a tension pin, that silver pin. Into one of those holes at the top, insert the tension rod and turn it clockwise. As you turn it clockwise, it will reveal new additional holes, and into one of those new holes is where you'll set your tension pin. You'll install your spring hinges in the middle and bottom before going to the top. The top will always be the last place to put a spring hinge. Now, the amount of tension that you can set on these is, and forgive me as I search for it, I don't see what I'm looking for specified. Okay, there it is. I found it. Sorry. I knew I was right. If you are going to go to 180 degrees or beyond 90, 3-hole maximum. If you're only going to go to 90, you can go to 4 holes. That's the bottom line in terms of how much tension to set on the spring hinge. So that's just your procedure. Get the door hung clockwise, insert a pin, test it. That sort of scenario. Okay. So we've gone over all of the documents down below. Tension pins and tension rods are available separately. There are links below this video to those. This hinge is going to be available in every typical and atypical finish. Not only prime coat, but 601 for bright black Japan, zinc coated, all your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickel, satin polished, antique, oil rub bronze. Bommer will basically put any finish on this that you want. You can also, of course, get this in a 4x4 size, which would be LB4311-400- whatever your finish is. Finally, well, tantamount, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all the Bommer products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, along with a link to the full product catalog. Now that's handy because you'll be able to see all of the different hinges, single-acting spring hinges like this. I would suggest that you pull that document up, do a find function on your keyboard, and type in LB4311. You get to the page or pages where you see this hinge, and more importantly, possibly more importantly, all of its sister products, is the bottom line. There is a video below this video that is a guide how to determine which residential spring hinge that you need. There are lots of variants of spring hinges for residential applications that Bommer can manufacture for and offers hinges for, so that video might help you determine which hinge part number you need. LB4311 may not be the right one. Finally, there is a link below this video. There is an image stamped, a logo stamped on the hinge. It says Bommer, made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer, number LB4311-350-600, single acting spring hinge, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.